Welcome to All For United WFC. Hello and welcome to All For United with me, John Foster, MUFC. Slightly later show tonight. Kathryn has been out and about following the Lionesses, so it was a little bit too early, 7 o'clock one. So, Kathryn, thank you very much for coming on and joining us at 8 o'clock. How are you doing, Kathryn? You okay?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. I think I might be catching up on sleep tomorrow after a few busy days covering England.
Yeah, I am very grateful that you're coming on. Thank you. And this will be a slightly shorter episode tonight. Obviously, we appreciate it a little bit later, and we've all had busy days. So, just thought we'd throw this one in because it kind of continues or follows on, I should say, from our debate that me and Barry had on Monday's show. So, just before we get into that, Barry, how are you keeping? You okay?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us on again.
Awesome. Yep, no problem. Well, let's get straight into it then. So, Monday's show was all about trying to get more goals, and we kind of picked up that Tooney only scored 1 goal in the last 12 games. I think that was a stat for Man United. And we obviously want the goal average. We know Russo can score, Martin Thomas and Galton's chipping in with a few. But we really need Tooney to start scoring for United now if we want to boost up this goal average to just about get Champions League. So she's doing great for England, obviously scoring 4 goals in 2 matches. So, Kathryn, just over to yourself first. What were your thoughts on Tooney over the last couple of games? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, I think in my opinion, she was probably the standout player for England over the 2 games. Obviously, North Macedonia didn't provide too much of a tough test for England. It was always going to be a sort of straightforward game, but I expected a bit more from Northern Ireland. They're always quite tricky. So to score against them, I think she got 2 assists as well. You can't say fairer than that. So I think that she played really well in the 2 games. I know perhaps just before the international break, as you're saying about maybe the lack of goals, I remember that chance at Old Trafford, which she sort of ballooned over the bar from just a few yards out, which most days she probably puts in the back of the net. So hopefully that's sort of behind her now. And as you say, 4 goals in the last 2 games for England, coming back to play for United in the league, she should be full of confidence.
Yeah, and Barry just touching on that. I mean, it was all about confidence for me. She chose one of those games. I don't know if it's at Old Trafford or LSV, where she chose to pass when she had a great opportunity to take a shot herself. And these 4 goals has got to be helping any confidence that she might not have in front of goal. But yeah, how have you seen this last week in regards to helping Tooney get on the score sheet?
No, I mean, absolutely. We had the conversation on Monday. It's that recurring nightmare, as I said, of that exact shot that you're talking about, and Kathryn's just giving me a second recurring nightmare there, remembering the one that was ballooned over as well. So I'm glad she's going to be catching up on sleep, because I think I'll be losing quite a bit thinking about both of those. But my hope would be is that now she can take that form into the last 3 games of the season. I said to you on Monday, we need her to be confident. We need her to be shooting. We need her to be ready to go. And even against Northern Ireland, she had another shot that was a whisker away from going in onto the top corner there. So I think Tooney's got absolutely everything that you need in a attacking midfielder. Bar none. And Kathryn's already said it. She was by far the standout player for England over both games. She played 180 minutes, 4 goals, 3 assists. If she does that in the next 2 games that we've got, then you could argue United are probably going to have a fighting chance of getting that goal difference up a little bit. So, yeah, I think it was really good that Toone does that. But I think my biggest hope for Toone now is that she is allowed to go forward. And I think we don't want to see too much reliance on her being the one that creates all of the goals. There were lots of creative people for England. You had Hemp down one side, Stanway as well. There were lots of people who were helping in that situation. And I just think sometimes we can be a little bit too reliant on Ella to be the one who sets it up for our front 3 of Russo, Galton and Thomas. And so then she's thinking too much more about how she can set up for those 3. Whereas here in England, I think she just had the confidence to just let fly whenever she saw a sight of goal. And I think we need that. I think we're going to need that going forward.
Well, I want to ask Kathryn, just like in regards to where Ella 2 was kind of playing on the pitch, whereabouts she was. But before I do, Connor's chipping in with a comment here. Good for confidence, but was it really worth the risk from a United point of view? I think it was Landela who was saying that she's played like 180 minutes. Obviously, you've just done it yourself there, Barry. I think one thing with Tooney is, she is young and fit, isn't she? We've seen some of the United players who have looked a little bit sluggish. For me, I don't think Tooney's one of those people. I know there's still another game to come, but for me, I'm not too worried about fitness. What I am worried about is, of course, if she gets injured. But yeah, just for yourself there, Kathryn. When you was watching the games yesterday, whereabouts was she playing? Obviously, it's a bit hard to say when it's like a 5-0 win and you're very dominant. You can be pretty much anywhere you want to be. But at United, we've seen her on the right wing and we've seen her as an attacking midfielder. Was she kind of in the same positions or somewhere different?
She was down the left quite a bit, especially in the first half, linking up with Lauren Hemp. And to be fair, she did that really well. I thought they had a really good connection, and that's given me quite a bit of confidence for the Euros if they can kind of really build on that, because that could be a real threat going forwards. And obviously, you're going to have a lot of the ball against Northern Ireland. You're going to have a lot more space than you probably will do come, matches against Norway and Austria in the summer. But one thing I did see from Ella was I thought her creativity of both games was brilliant. I think some of her assists in the North Macedonia game, I think the cross for Ellen White's goal was, inch perfect. He was very heavily involved in I think she got the assist for Lauren Hemp's goal, the first goal, and then there was a move before that where Beth Mead had a shot cleared off the line where she'd played Hemp through and Hemp had crossed the back. And those two sort of really kind of tore Northern Ireland apart, especially in the first half. And then second half, I think she was in the same position, but maybe came a little bit more central and had, to maybe get more of an eyesight for goal. But and just on Connor's point, I think I sort of agree with you in terms of I think she's got such an engine. Playing 2 games probably isn't going to affect her too much more. So you've got the rest at the weekend, so it's not like she's been thrown into a game. She has got that recovery time, so hopefully it won't.
Yeah. And how about the rest of the United players? I know we didn't see too much of them. I think Erskine had the first game, Hampton the second game, and Russo I think came on as a sub along with Katie Zellen. But did you get to see much of those or around the players? What were your thoughts on the rest of the United players?
Well, I mean, Mary Apps, I think, had 1 save to make yesterday, which was fairly routine. I was a little bit disappointed we didn't see more of Alessia Russo just because of how good form she's been in the league. I understand her, Serena bringing on Beth England last night because I think she obviously didn't get a chance to look at her in the Arnold Clark Cup and has also been in good form. And I think she, I understand her coming on, but maybe Russo could have started the North Macedonia game or maybe could have come on a bit earlier. Again, I understand sort of starting Ellen White because she's probably going to be the starting forward at the Euros and you want to get into that rhythm of playing the team that you're probably going to start in that first match. But Ellen White could get injured, in the build-up to the Euros. Beth England could get injured. And I think it would be nice if Alessia Russo had a bit more international experience of playing international games before the summer because barring an injury, she is going to be in that squad. And I would have liked to have seen her come on last night, put her up front with Beth England or even put her up front with Ellen White in the first game.
Yeah, just while I'm talking about Russo, I mean, we've had this conversation for the last few weeks now with how Russo's been playing and how good she's been playing, how consistent, and she's scoring the goals. She's obviously still young. Can you see her being England's, not number one, number 9, number 1 striker, number 9 going forward? And if that's the case, should we start playing her early and start getting in there right now? What are we waiting for?
I think definitely in the future she will be England's main striker. I think we know it's probably going to be Ellen White in the Euros. 2023 World Cup is another year away. Again, it's kind of hard to predict, whether Ellen White will still be that main striker, this time next year, or whether it will have shifted to Russo. Obviously, there'll be a few, there'll be games in between the Euros and the World Cup next summer. But yeah, I think she does need to play. She needs to play in these games. I understand they're qualifiers and you have to win them, but realistically, we were always going to beat North Macedonia. We were probably always going to beat Northern Ireland. But the fact that we only need a point against Austria in the next qualifier and that last game against Luxembourg, you'd like to see the start. But if she's going to be a player in the Euros as well, that we're bringing off the bench if we need a goal, again, you probably want her to play a bit more games. We've got 2 warm-up games, obviously, before the Euros start. Hopefully she kind of gets a look in there as well. But I mean, we all know how good she is and how good she, how even better she can become. She's still only young, and definitely going forward, she will be at some point England's number 1 striker or number 9, as you say. But at the minute, especially for the Euros, it would take, I think it would take an injury to Ellen White to shift her, unless they play 2 up front. But Serena looks pretty set in 4-3-3.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, Barry, just your thoughts on the little game time that Leicester United camp had. I mean, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Was it a surprise? What are your thoughts on them, mate?
I think a bit of both. I think for Tooney, she is, if you can say it, more naturally fit, so I'll be less worried about her. She's played 100 times for Manchester United now, so I don't think for her appearances are going to be a drama. I think Mary Earps only playing the 1 game. It's good in England's point of view, to give Hannah Hampton that chance to play as well. I do think that we was discussing beforehand for Mary Earps, she's a very interesting situation for her because she's had a lot of clean sheets, but like looking at the last 5 games that she's played, she's not really had that many shots to save. We've already said against Northern Ireland there was only the 1 shot to save. Against Latvia there was no shots. It's only 3 against Austria, and then none again against Latvia. So it's a tricky one there because she's playing, but she's not actually really doing anything. She's just sort of there, maybe taking a lot of goal kicks. So it's good for kicking practice, it feels like, for Earps. But the good thing about that, she's not likely to get injured doing any of that. So I think it's the confidence for her comes in the fact that, Serena's come straight out and said she's number 1. And that's going to be, I think, the thing that kicks Mary on a little bit. For Russo, I was more pleased actually that she only had the 19 minutes. I think she doesn't really need those games in internationals. Would it have been nice for her to have got a few goals? Absolutely, because again that would have improved the confidence. But I think the way she's been playing domestically anyway, I think she's gonna have that already when she comes back to United. So not too worried about that for Russo. I guess really I just feel a little bit sorry for Katie Zellem, because if you can't get a match against North Macedonia, when is she going to be given that opportunity, I think. So I do feel for her more than any of the others. But no, I wasn't too fussed, really, that they didn't get too much game time.
I think on Russo, I agree with you. I think we need to kind of limit her game time at the moment as a Man United fan, purely as a Man United fan, because when we saw her subbed off the other day against Brighton, she did look like she was panting quite a bit. It was a tough game for her. She has played a lot of minutes. Probably not used to playing a full season for quite a while because of her injuries. So I think it did to me make sense not playing her too much. Zellem, I've left this one on screen right now. It's a great point by Lansel. I never picked it up. The only one playing for the club is Zellem in that list, and I think on that list it was Paris Scott and Jordan Nobbs as well. So yeah, just your thoughts on that, Kathryn. We had Rich Laverty on the show and we had Reece Land on the show last week. Now it was. And it was a great debate. There's no right or wrong answer on this. One was saying you should pick your international players based on form at the club. The other one was saying it's got nothing to do with the club. It doesn't matter how you do for the club. It's all about how you're playing for that international team. It's a different tactics, different manager, different players. Just where are your thoughts on that? Just before we move on, how would you kind of pick your international team?
I think it has to be a bit of both. I mean, if someone's in really, really poor form for their club, you probably might question, whether they're going to make the England squad. I don't think it's too dissimilar between the England women's and men's camps. You look at sort of Gareth Southgate, picks Harry Maguire, but doesn't pick Marcus Rashford. I think sometimes it depends on position as well and how many games they've played for that manager and whether they're a kind of core part of that national team, as Maguire obviously has been brilliant in tournaments for England, has got quite a few caps now. As Rashford in tournaments has sort of come in and out, has had some really good moments, but has also kind of not started quite a few games as well. And especially in those forward positions, I do think form maybe is, I don't know, maybe that's not fair to say, but sometimes I think with your strikers, you want your strikers to really be in form, whereas maybe some of the other positions, players aren't playing every week for their club. You look at Raheem Sterling was one as well in the Euros. He'd not really had a good season at Man City, but came in for England, was, I think, either joint top scorer with Harry Kane or top scorer, because Southgate trusted him. And I think for Serena, it's quite similar with, especially when you're picking a squad as well, like people would maybe question, I know obviously with Jill Scott on that list, realistically, is Jill Scott going to play many games in the Euros? Probably not. She might come off the bench, maybe to help see a game out. But you look at her experience, she's been at so many tournaments, 150 caps. Sometimes managers like having players in the group. But it goes back to that Jordan Henderson debate with Roy Keane saying, what's he doing? Is he getting the pizzas in, or is he there to tell a joke or something? Having Jill Scott there for her experience, she might not play many minutes, but you can't deny that she'd be a great character to have in that dressing room, to help the squad. And you can't pick every player based on that, but I do think there are some exceptions when it comes to players not necessarily playing every week, or maybe not being sort of red hot on form. So I'm kind of on the fence with half and half.
Yeah, I do agree with what you said there. I think you can say a lot of things about the Man United players as well. Certain players are there not just because of what they do on the pitch, but the influence that they might have in the dressing room. And you do need leaders, especially in the Euros and the World Cups. You do need players who have been there before, who aren't going to let the occasion get to them. But on the flip side, you can say, well, what a great time to bring a youngster in who's full of beans, who kind of run the legs off him. It's brand new to them. It's like. I do get it. It's a tough debate to have. Just before we move on to the rest of the United players, Barry, just stick with yourself, Kathryn, on the City players who have played for the Lionesses the last couple of games. Obviously, I've got to mention them because we're up against them there for the next 3 games, so to speak, getting on the score sheet as well. What were your thoughts on the City players, Kathryn?
Yeah, I mean, Hemp and Stanway, again, were probably up there with Toone in terms of 2 of the best performers across both games. I actually think Georgia Stanway has probably been one of the best players in the league since January. I think she's been superb. And I think she's really come into her own in that. Now she's playing in what is probably her more natural position rather than having to fill in at right back and stuff like that. I think she's really kind of playing her way into the starting lineup for England. Obviously, we all know how good Lauren Hemp is as well. I think maybe sometimes hasn't always quite got the goals that she maybe you say deserves, or maybe she hasn't quite been clinical enough. She always gets into the right positions, but either maybe, as I say, isn't clinical enough, or the final cross isn't quite there. But in these 2 games, obviously, they were, and she was brilliant. So, but I think both of those 2 players have probably been City's best 2 for most of the season anyway. And you'd be hard pressed to drop either of them for the first match. And before, I kind of thought Toone and Stanway would be battling it out for the same position in that starting lineup for the first game. But having watched the last 2, I know obviously Austria will be a lot tougher. I do think they can play together, especially with how Toone played in that sort of deeper role. So I'm quite encouraged by that.
Yeah, that's great for England, isn't it? It's fantastic, and it's great to see that obviously Man United players are getting in there, because City players are always in there. But just to say the word Tooney alongside those Man City players, it is great to see. Barry, Kathryn just mentioned a couple of names there. They are scary players, aren't they? They've been performing well throughout the whole season, really, apart from obviously the injuries that the Man City have had. But they are scary, aren't they?
Man City are a scary team. There's a reason why they're top 3. In terms of the league. So, I think City we know how difficult they can be. I mean, how many times have we played them this season? It must be 75, isn't it? I think about just constantly playing City this season. And we know how tough they are. We know that they're a tough nut to crack. But absolutely, I agree. Hemp and Stanway was superb. But I think, like you said, Kathryn, Hemp was the one who really stood out for me. She was just brilliant down that left, and her delivery of a ball is just fabulous. And we were talking a little bit off air, weren't we, John, about crossing the ball into the box and how we get those assists and how we get those opportunities to shoot. And she's just got, when she's crossing that ball, she knows exactly where she's going to put it. She puts it in exactly the right place. she picks the right pass. She does the right thing. She knows when to run with it. She knows when to pass. She knows when to dribble. She knows when to put it back. It's a frightening prospect. And when you consider, as I said, we've got Villa and West Ham coming up, and they've got Leicester and Birmingham. It's frightening, really, what City could do if they turn up.
Yeah, well, Barry, we know that City are going to score goals in the next 3 games. They've got 2 games where they should be scoring at least 3 or 4. And that's no disrespect, but on average, that's what they should be scoring against the likes of Leicester and Birmingham. I think it is. So we're expecting City to score. It's just whether or not we can also score. And just bringing it back to the start of the show, if Tooney can get on the score sheet, we know Russo can and Martha Thomas can, and you'd like to think that it will be a battle right to the very end, wouldn't you? And just talk about the very end, Kathryn, just on that race now for the top 3. Would you kind of lead towards City based on the fixtures, or what can you kind of see happening there?
It's tricky because I do think you've got the tougher running compared to City, just especially having that Chelsea game on the last day. Probably Chelsea are going to need at least, probably going to need to win the league. If Chelsea and Arsenal win all their games up to that point. But listen, we've seen a few shock results this season. There's been twists and turns throughout. We've seen. There was one point in the season where you thought the title was definitely Arsenal's, then it swung back in Chelsea's favour. People thought Tottenham and Brighton were going to get top 3, then, United, City. It's changed all throughout the season. So I think to sort of say now that it's just going to be dead set, I think there's still going to be twists and turns to come. As I say, I think City have got the easier run of fixtures. Easy, maybe not a nice word to say, but a less difficult run of fixtures. But they would still rather be in your position. They would still rather be third now, and I think that's what teams always say. You would still rather have be in third spot going into that race. And listen, I think Man United have been on a decent run recently, and get a good result against Villa. That might set them up for the last 2 games. Remember, City have still got the FA Cup to play. They get knocked out against West Ham. That could change things around. Or if they get through, they might have one eye on the cup final as well. So, as I say, I think twists and turns still to come.
Yeah. If I gave you 50 quid, Kathryn, where would you be placing that £50? Because I know
Man United. I know Man United podcast, aren't I? I can't remember Man United.
I get you.
If you gave me £50, I'd run off with it.
That's a good diplomatic answer. But genuinely, I said it Monday. I would be leaning towards potentially putting it on City as well for the very reasons that Kathryn stated. It doesn't look great.
I only did it Chelsea. If we didn't have Chelsea that last game, if it was anyone apart from Chelsea and Arsenal, I would probably still say that we was in the driving seat, because I still think we can turn up and score goals. But Chelsea last game season away, even I think that we won the dogs. I'm not going to say that we're not going to win, but of course, if you have to put your money where your mouth is one way, it'll be very hard to say United are going to go to Chelsea and win, and potentially win by 2 or 3 goals. That's the only thing that's the downfall, isn't it? We're going to move on, Barry. I know that you've got a few facts in front of you. Obviously, a lot more than just the Lionesses played this week from United. So, do you want to just reel off a few players who have played and a few scores, and maybe we can just have a 5-10 minute chat about some of those?
Yeah, I suppose a decent place to start whilst we're talking about goals for United would be to mention Martha Thomas. She played 86 minutes, obviously, against Spain in what was a much better performance for Scotland. They were pretty much hammered the last time they played Spain. They only lost 2-0 this time. And Martha had a great goal disallowed. I can't say whether it was actually offside or not, because I couldn't. Google was not being my friend finding that particular replay. But certainly the consensus seems to be that it was tight. So, it's either way. But I think what was really nice to see about that was she ran with the goalkeeper. So it's not just one of those where she keeps on just having a shot. She's shown she's got that skill and she's got that ability. She's played 21 games for us and she's scored 4 goals so far. And I think that needs to improve. When you look over the last 2 seasons, she scored 8 in 26 for West Ham, previous to coming to us, and she scored 7 in 13 for Scotland. So she's shown that she's capable. She's got the ability to go and score. So hopefully we can unlock Martha Thomas, I think, in that last 3 games, and it'd be nice if she was able to get forward and get a few more goals. There's no question in her work ethic, but certainly it would be nice to see her do that. And then on the flip side, of course, she only played the 14 minutes in that game against Martha Thomas in Scotland, but on a Batte, of course, back in defence. And, listen, she's, as we've stated in previous podcasts we looked at, one of the best right backs possibly in the world currently right now. And someone who's going to be vital. We spoke a bit about defence on Monday. We're going to need Honour, I think, to be on it if we're going to get anywhere in these games. She had the whole 90 minutes against Brazil and they only conceded the one there. So I think quite a successful period of play for both those teams. Scotland looking favourites to get the playoff position.
Just before we move on, Barry, Kathryn, just your thoughts on Honour last couple of weeks. Sorry, Barry. Sorry.
Right, I'll let you have it.
Well, I'll have it then because I put it in. I do apologise. But yeah, it's been around Twitter last week or two. Obviously, Emma Sanders, I think, is the one that originally tweeted it because I think she asked Skinner about the Barcelona talks, and then obviously the rumours about Ash Neville coming in as well. You put 2 and 2 together and come up with 9,000. But what are your thoughts on her? You couldn't blame her if she didn't want to stay. However, she does have that 1 year extension that the club couldn't obviously go for. What are your thoughts on next season? You reckon she'll start at United?
Listen, I think Champions League qualification and getting that could be a big part of the decision. Probably the most important part if you get Champions League. I think the fact that she would have been so heavily involved in that, I think she'd find it very difficult to leave. Obviously, it's difficult to turn down a team like Barcelona if they were the ones coming in. Probably easier to turn down a rival English club, just based on the reaction you guys would probably give her when she would play against you. So, she's probably not made a decision herself. She'll probably wait until the end of the season and analyse things. Maybe even wait until the end of the Euros. But as you say, I mean, she's a hugely important player for United, and if you're the club, you're doing everything you can to convince her to stay. Even if you don't make the Champions League, you're showing in terms of the plans that the club are going to put in place to make sure they do get it in the few years, and saying, what a vital part of that she is. So it's partly down to the club as well. They've got to really try and sell it to her. I mean, not that you don't need to sell Man United too much because of the size of the club, but sometimes, look in the women's game, sometimes you do have to sell it a bit more. So we'll see. But listen, I think as for your guys, I hope she obviously stays at United.
And from the Glazers' point of view, is it a case of if we kind of extend the contract now, obviously we can get money for her if we do sell her? Does the club want to cash in on her instead because she'll go for free next summer? I don't know. It's not something that we're used to seeing in the women's game because usually contracts run out and then they just move on, don't they? But because we could potentially get a good amount of money for her, is the club thinking, okay, we can get 2 or 3 good players here in place of Honour? I'm not saying that we should do that, but I'm just trying to think of it from another way of looking at it. Barry, sorry to interrupt you. Crack on, mate.
No worries. I think just going back to that Honour thing, I do think actually the key thing there is going to be whether or not that, if we said we got $500,000 for her, would it come back into the women's game, or does it sit somewhere else with the window cleaners in their bucket? But we'll leave that for another day. So Wales was another good set of results for them. They lost to France 2-1, but again a really good performance from the players that played, and a 3-0 win away to Kazakhstan. So again, they're in the shout of the playoffs. I think the key thing from that was Hayley Ladd obviously managed 2 appearances, both of them for the full game. They only conceded the 1 goal, obviously, against France, and she played in centre-back position for that, which could be vital going into those last 3 games, bearing in mind we are somewhat threadbare in our centre-back pairings. Although it was nice to see for Mannion. I don't know if we saw that. There's a little TikTok of her. She's looking quite good with her walk-in, so that's quite positive. And possibly Diane Caldwell as well, potentially ready to return as well, I think. So we might need Ladd, we might not, but it's good to know that she's there. And Carrie Jones was a name that just came up actually on the comments as well, having played really well against France. It was really quite good. She won 5 free kicks, had a shot saved early on as well. So, potentially somebody who could come on instead of Thomas. So I think really there, my question for you there, Kathryn, would be, we just mentioned Hayley Ladd potentially going into defence. What do you make of the United defence at the moment? And do you think, that could be a key part in this whole United City race that we've got at the moment? The fact that we're having the same problems at the end of the season that City were having at the start.
Yeah, I think we saw in that West Ham game with, obviously, I think Katie Zellam had gone back into centre-back, conceding the late goal. The late goal was probably down to the lack of options there in defence. But I think apart from that, I think you've coped pretty well, considering, there was the early goal against Everton, but again, apart from that, they didn't cause too many problems. I think they were pretty solid against Brighton as well. So I think we've obviously talked about the tough fixtures. You probably don't want to go into that Chelsea game with a threadbare defence, but against Villa, you're probably expecting to dominate the ball quite a bit, so you'd probably be okay there. And then obviously West Ham again, they're slightly better, but again, we don't know what they may or may not get against City, and whether they'll have one eye on a cup final or whether they might sort of be a bit deflated if they lose that. So, but no, Hayley Ladd, I thought she played really well against Everton, sort of playing, in that deeper role. So you can certainly do a job there. So I wouldn't be too concerned unless, as we say, we end up maybe with Katie Sellam back in centre back for the Chelsea game. That wouldn't be ideal, to say the least. But hopefully Diane Caldwell should be back as well. I don't think that was too of a serious injury, so hopefully the break that she's had should mean she's fine to come back into the team too.
Yeah, so in that respect, maybe the break was a helpful thing after all that, Connor. Who knows? After all that, I said it was so bad. And also, Hayley Ladd's really good with her head. So, sometimes when you get these Zellam corners coming in, it would be really handy, actually, having Hayley Ladd up there with the potential to get a goal. So moving on to Norway, unless you had anything to add on Wales there, John?
No, mate, crack on, that's fine.
No,
yeah.
So Norway, 2 smashing wins for them, 5-1 against Kosovo, 2-1 against Poland, pretty much helped them to clinch the group mostly, I would have thought. Obviously, the 2 key ones from our point of view, Vilda Risa, 2 appearances, 1 assist, 1 yellow card, and played 1.5 games, so that was quite good for Vilda. Maria, 2 appearances, played both matches, the whole game. 2 goals conceded, but we know that Maria is certainly capable at centre back. And could we be looking at as we said, Maria and Diane back in centre back? Both of the yellows were, and I'm going to use the Sky Sports quote here, for bad fouls. I don't know. They're ranking fouls now in their commentary, so that's as much as I could get. So I don't know how bad it was. Obviously not quite as bad as Keane, but not good. Not quite Stanway-esque. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But I think that the thing I thought mostly from that was that maybe, I mentioned earlier about Tooney potentially playing further forward and maybe not having to worry so much about assists. So I wondered if maybe Vilda Risa coming into the centre of the park, potentially alongside Jackie Groenen, who had a superb game for the Netherlands, 12-0 against Cyprus, 5-1 against South Africa. She scored an absolute rocket of a goal from midfield once again, about 25 yards out. She had another one in 2019, if we remember, back in the World Cup back then. Semi-finals against Sweden, that low shot that got them into the final. So she's very, very good as well. And I just wonder if maybe that midfield 3 in that respect of Tooney playing slightly further forward, Groningen and Bilderbo-Risa, if we wanted to go a bit more attacking, might potentially be the key to unlocking these defences. So, that's certainly something that I was thinking there. But Kathryn, I think for you, what I wanted to ask there was more about Jackie Groningen. We're still waiting. We're still waiting for a goal from her. She's played 47 games for us and yet to register one. 13 in 79 at Frankfurt. She scored 9 in 84 for Holland. What's your thoughts on Jackie Groningen? Because we love her, but we can't get her on the score sheet. What are we doing wrong, Kathryn?
I know it's a strange one. When you hear those songs of Jackie scores are on the pitch, it's a bit strange for a midfielder because usually midfielders score a bit more regularly. I think she just has to have a go a bit more. I mean, you see some of the goals that she scored for Holland in the past. They're, as you were sort of on, sort of spectacular long ranges. She's got a good shot on her. Maybe just needs to, have a go a little bit more, and also get maybe a little bit higher up the pitch. I think sometimes she can get dragged into maybe getting a bit too deep, or maybe even just a case of overthinking it. You think you can get in your own head when you know you've not scored for such a long time, and instead of having that confidence to actually shoot, you're looking for the pass. I mean, it reminds me of Toone's goal against North Macedonia. I think she'd got a bit frustrated because maybe wasn't getting the ball or had given the ball away a couple of times. It was as if she just got the ball and went, right, I'm shooting. And then it was a sort of one of those long range shots that sort of bounced in front of the keeper, and she just sort of took matters into her own hands. I think Jackie just needs to go, next game against Villa, just get the ball and go, right, I'm having a go. And hopefully it might sort of fly in. But maybe when she gets one, the floodgates will open. That's what you have to hope.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a reluctance, I think, from both Tooney and Groningen to sort of shoot from distance for United, and so I would definitely hope that she gets herself on that score sheet soon and no better time. I think within these last 3 games. But John, what did you think as well about that little triumvirate in the middle there that I'm talking about? Would that excite you, or do you think I'm slightly crazy?
No, something that I think a lot of us would love to see, especially at one point. I think, was it Jackie's back heel got kind of assisted by Risa to score on one of them a few weeks ago for United, and we thought that was like a sign of things to come. However, there's no way that Katie Zellum deserves to be dropped at the moment. I think the only way it could potentially work is if Harry Ladd played at the back, so she's still on the pitch. Zellum maybe playing a more defensive kind of role, which you could do against Aston Villa, and then that'll, like you say, leave Bilderbo-Risa and Jackie ahead of Zellum, with maybe Tooney on one side, Thomas and Russo up front, or it would be Galton. It'll be Galton probably instead of Thomas. But yeah, there's so many variations. We've still not put our finger on it from the start of the season right up until the end of the season. It would be great to get them all on the pitch. But the good thing is, if you're on form, you're probably going to be playing. If you're not quite on form, or if you're not training, or if you need to be rested, then somebody else is on form to step into your shoes. And that's the kind of position you want to be in.
For sure. And I suppose there is also the potential of maybe moving either Thomas or Galton off the bench and onto the bench, and putting Groningen on there instead that way, and only going 2 up front. But yeah, and I think the last thing for Jackie there was she got a hat-trick of assists in the game against Cyprus. So, she's certainly capable of doing it. And I totally agree with what TJ's just said there. The midfield is absolutely just plumb full of good options in that place. So it's good, but I think we need to settle for these last 3 games and really have a good crack at it. And the last game, which we don't really need to look at, was more about a player who didn't play, even though they were called up, which was Sina Brun. There was lots of hope that she was going to get the chance to play in their second game. She still wasn't fit enough to be able to do that. She scored 6 goals in 11 for Lyon so far this season. We know that she scored 12 internationally from 7 games. Granted, half of those came against Bosnia and Herzegovina. But I think really for me that the last sort of question that we've got there is what Lanzell mentioned just a moment ago in the comments. So I'll throw it out there for you, Kathryn. Is she signing for United? Is there any news? Could we expect her to? And if there's no news, Do you think that she would, or do you think, again, it's a bit like on a Batte and she's going to be more bothered about whether we're in the Champions League next season as to whether she commits to staying with us for another season?
I think she would sign if the offer was there and the offer was right. I think it's. I mean, you guys probably already know, but I think you've been told that she's very happy at the club. She's obviously a fan of the club. No issues whatsoever. Obviously, she's been a bit frustrated that she's not maybe had the time on the pitch that she wants with injuries and having, getting the fitness up. But she's definitely happy. But she is a player that's going to have options in the summer, from other clubs. And if United are slow or don't make an offer, then she could go elsewhere. It's, I think, obviously down to the player, but the club have a big role to play here. If they really want to, they've, similar with Honor, you got to go in, you got to make that bid. You've got to really try and convince and sell it to her, because I don't think it would need a hard sell in the sense that she's a fan of the club. When you've maybe not got that connection, maybe you need a bit more of a harder sell. But I think if the offer was there and it was a decent one, I think she would sign. But she will, as I say, she will have options, I think, from other clubs in the summer. So United need to be quick. But we know sometimes United aren't quick, and that's not just United in the WSL. There's a lot of clubs, Arsenal and other, that can be a bit slow in terms of renewing contracts or making offers for players whose deals are up.
Yeah. Barry did exactly the same thing as he did on Monday, halfway through his speech or halfway through his show. He just vanishes. I'm sure we'll be back on his internet working again. I don't know what happens to it, really. I'm sure we'll be back shortly.
He's gone to write up an offer for Breen.
He's just come back. I think I might just leave him backstage now. But what I was saying to Barry just before we did go on air, what would hurt United fans a lot is we just haven't seen the best of Sinja just yet, have we? And it's such a shame because we know how talented she is. Was really excited. I mean, that was an amazing January signing in regards to her quality. But we just haven't seen it, have we? So, Barry, let's kind of end the show with yourself, just throwing that back out there to you. It would be very disappointing if she doesn't get more game time, doesn't score, doesn't do what we kind of expect of her. And it's not her fault as such. She's come to a brand new country. She's up against Russo, and I've said myself, I don't think Russo should make way for her. Everyone's saying that Russo shouldn't play wide. So unless we're going to change the whole system just for Sinja, which I think would be wrong, it's going to be very hard for her to kind of have a fantastic 3 games now, isn't it?
It would be. I think it would be almost as disappointing as my iPad connection to StreamYard, which has now knocked me out twice. I will have to go back to my phone, which has been far better at keeping me online. It's again, this is what you want to be in. You want to be in a situation where that when you take a player off, you've got somebody else coming on who is just as likely to go and score you goals. Look at Solskjaer. That was literally his MO. Was don't worry about starting me, boss, not a problem. Bring me off the bench and I'll score 4 for you against Nottingham Forest, even though you told me not to worry. So I'm not saying that we necessarily want Brune to always be coming off the bench. Again, there's the opportunity to go 2 up front. But yeah, in these last 3 games, it's going to be really difficult for her to do that. More so because she's not fit. The injuries would have kept her out. I don't know how well she would have been training through all that time as well. So, for her to hit the ground running, it would take a superhuman effort. So I think a substitute appearance really is the best that we can hope for. But equally, isn't that just a sort of substitution that you want to be having if you need an attacking threat to be able to bring on someone like Sina Brune rather than the tried, the untested Carrie Jones, for example, in that respect, or even a Kirsty Hansen in terms of goals in the WSL. You would want someone who can do it at the highest level, and we know for a fact that Sina can do that. So, yeah, it's going to be really, really tough. But I think ultimately we can say that this whole international window has probably been more positive for United than negative. We don't appear to have had many coming away with injuries, and hopefully that stays the same, touch wood. Yeah. And let's be honest, for the WSL as a whole, that's what we're going to want, isn't it? As we want that running for Arsenal and Chelsea to go down to the end, and we want it, well, not right to the end, preferably the penultimate game would be great, so that Chelsea are champions by the last game. That would be mint. But Of course, if we can't quite have that, then let's hope it all goes down to that last game against Chelsea. And like I say, that could well be the moment that we all remember for years to come, or the moment we forget immediately.
It's going to be a long journey back home, isn't it?
Well, for you, yeah.
Yeah, it is for me and the Manchester lot as well, yeah.
Not so far for me.
Thanks for doing that bit of research there on some of the other players away from the Lionesses. Kathryn, thank you very much for jumping on. Got a little bit longer than we thought it was, but a 45-minute show is still a good amount of time. So thank you very much, Kathryn. What's your plans for the rest of the week? You got anything lined up?
Oh, I'm sleeping tomorrow, I think, after today's events. Obviously, FA Cup at the weekend is probably the next thing I'm looking on, but tomorrow I am taking it easy.
Don't blame you at all. As for United, we've got our usual live show tomorrow at 7 o'clock with myself, Connor, and guests. We've got the Friday Night Fan Forum with Connor, so he's going to be busy the next couple of days, although he has had a couple of nights off. Saturday Night Live on Saturday, and then we'll have some content for Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 5, where we support our local teams there. So plenty to be watching throughout the rest of the week. Thank you to everybody in the comments. I know it's a bit later than usual, but thank you for joining in, and we shall see you again.